Cicerelli Show.
So, solo trailer about to drop. We're going to revisit The Empire Strikes Back. Here's the thing about Empire Strikes Back and why it's relevant, because I always considered Empire Strikes Back to be Han Solo's movie. It showcases Han Solo and good and bad, all his like strengths and weaknesses, and I consider it Han Solo's movie. So the crawl really catches you up to where these characters develop, and much like The Last Jedi did, you're kind of like in this new place. What it does is it kind of just tells you, from the destruction of the Death Star, it's The Empire Strikes Back. So the rebels are on the run, and it kind of puts you in the middle of that. And what this movie does, first of all, this movie was not written by George Lucas and not directed by him. The actual writing credits go to Leigh Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan. First of all, Lucas had a great idea, and Lucas, had this brilliant vision. Somebody else took that vision and said, hey, I got something, which is why I think they're going with that formula with this new trilogy where they keep passing it off to these new directors. Because it's like, let's keep this thing hopping, keeping this thing fresh. And it really... there's a lot of different opinions about The Last Jedi, whether it's like, some people love it, some people hate it. It's basically split the Star Wars nerd universe down the road, and there's different opinions on both sides, but it does follow that same structure, whereas Star Wars made that foundation, and these directors and writers took over Empire and just like kind of took it off with it, and that's kind of what happened, the same thing with Last Jedi. And Empire really, as far as you could argue it doesn't have an ending, but as far as like the pacing and the storyline, it is a really well, I truly, after watching it again and really looking at it, I think it really is the best Star Wars. I mean, it just paces nice and everything, the character development, when it opens up, what it does from the crawl and those first few moments, which is really an achievement of movie making, is it kind of just like catches you up to the development of these characters really quick. And when I say catches you up to the development of it, it's, there's two big things. There's the friendship of Han and Luke. That's really just kind of just brought out, like, just from their communications with each other. You could just tell there's like this old friendship of over their years of being on the run from the Empire, and it's shown naturally. And another thing which like really develops naturally is the Han-Leia relationship. I mean, that thing really just paces and goes naturally. And the shame of it is like you look at that and it's like, the Padme Anakin thing was such the opposite. It was so forced and uncomfortable and awkward, and you didn't buy it. And this Han and Leia thing was a great told love story. It kind of harkened, it reminds me of, because I am a big Man of Steel fan, and one of the things I liked about Man of Steel was the way the Superman Lois Lane relationship developed, because it was like both these people are scared and they're going through this, this discovery and all this stuff together, and they're both getting captured aboard this alien ship. And you see like, between their fear and they're like having to trust each other is how that relationship develops naturally, which is why I get annoyed at these newer DC movies, because I was a real big fan of the Man of Steel. I just did not like what happened to Superman in that movie. I just don't. I think that, and even like Wonder Woman in the Superman movie, it's like the whole DC universe are trying to force together just doesn't do these characters justice. But anyway, to digress, going back to the Han and Leia, because of like Han and Luke's friendship and how you see it develop, and like you see like they've become closer from the time of A New Hope. And what it does, it gives more power to certain scenes. Like I do these revisits because knowing now what you didn't know back then, it's like, it's been in the trailers, Luke's entrance to the Millennium Falcon, how he's like haunted by it. And it just, you harken back to that friendship and you look back and you understand why. And it gives more depth to that. And the shame of it is the way the pacing of these movies are going is we never got that reunion of the big three, the Han Solo, the Leia, and the Luke. We'll never have that again, which is the shame of it. But they're kind of moving this along to the next generation, much as life goes. So, it's okay. Just, I wish we didn't get robbed of that, of seeing the three together in the Falcon again. But you know what? If you do that, maybe it would have taken away the specialty of the old movies. Obviously, and, if you watch Empire now, which I say is Han Solo's movie, a lot of it is looking forward, you're like, the next thing coming down the road is this the Solo movie, which is, as if you're not familiar with it, if you're not familiar with the program, if you watch this show, you probably are, but they're doing the episodic movies, and between the episodic movies is going to be a standalone movie. Rogue One was the first one, and now Solo's coming after 8. And the idea is that way every December, or every year at least, they're going to have a Star Wars movie. So when you're watching this, it makes you a little more wary of the Solo movie. And what it's really going to be is the Solo teaser has to sell us this Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. It's almost like a daunting task. It's almost more daunting than anything that's been done with this new trilogy. I'm very curious to see the reaction to this teaser, and if it's going to have that moment where it's like, oh my God, I did it. He's going to step out and say something or do something. I'm very curious how they're going to sell this to us. And another thing I've noticed, a little side note on that, is if you've noticed the packaging, I don't know if you've seen any of that, the stuff they've been showing, some packaging leaked, but there's a lot of oranges and yellows, and I think they learned a lesson from Rogue One, because Rogue One kind of made their movie poster and their marketing similar to a lot of like the traditional Star Wars movie, which is like the faces and the Darth Vader head and this and that. And now this Han Solo's got this brighter orange yellow thing, and it's trying to market itself a little different. And I think the reason why is what they have to combat with this new program they're doing is, as much of a success Rogue One was, and I remember when I did the Rogue One show with Paul thought it was the sequel to Force Awakens. A lot of people went into that saying, they see Jyn Erso and are like, is that Rey? What happened to Rey or Finn? They couldn't make that transition. So obviously this is Han Solo. So we're going to know, obviously it's not the sequel. But I think that leap of that different packaging and marketing is the way they're probably going to move going forward. And this is a little theory of mine. Let's talk about Darth Vader. Now, it's really a different Vader from, and I consider the Rogue One / New Hope Vader pretty consistent with itself, and consistent in the fact of Vader's ranking within the Empire and his role, whereas what his role is in Empire Strikes Back, where, he's not on Tarkin's leash, like Leia says, anymore, which is really true. And one of the things that crossed my mind, like I said, knowing now, which you didn't know then, was like, how did Vader kind of move up the ranks with this big failure of the Death Star? Isn't that part his failure too? But if you think back at it, Vader was against this whole Death Star thing the whole time anyway. And he's made that clear in A New Hope. He's like, don't be so proud of this technological terror you've created. And in his conversations with, Director Krennic in Rogue One, where he's like, its ability to cause problems has been apparent. Like, it's been very, very clear Darth Vader has never been a big fan of the Death Star. And because he's more of like, well, I'm supposed to be the Lord of the Sith, we're supposed to do things my way. And maybe what I reflect from that is Vader's rise to command of the Empire and his different role here might be because he might have whispered in the Emperor's ear, like, I told you, like, bro, let me do this my way. Like, let me find these rebels. And he's got a very aggressive stance. I mean, he's just force choking leaders left and right. Like Vader, like, excuse the pun, runs a tight ship. You know what I'm saying? Like, he don't take no failure, no excuses or nothing. And he's just go. He's pushing people through asteroid fields. And once again, the asteroid chase is a really, like, watching this movie and seeing Han Solo at his best, which I consider Empire. I consider Force Awakens to be very consistent with the character of Han Solo. But watching the way Han Solo moves through this movie, it's like, they really got a beautiful chance to do something great with this Solo movie if they could pull it off. If you could pull off the sell and make us believe in Han Solo. And I really think it's the teaser that's going to do it. So we got to Luke on Dagobah. If you really think of the kind of the Force moves Obi-Wan did and even what Vader did, you really not have a big exposure to the Force. And this movie is an explanation and an exposure of the Force. I mean, Yoda pretty much just breaks it down on a chalkboard and tells him everything. He explains the dark side. He explains the light side. His hesitance to train Luke. I referred to this back in the Last Jedi review, but I was like, the way Yoda, like, comes upon Luke, and he's like tricking him. He's like, "Oh, you see Yoda? Oh, great Jedi!" And he's he's trying Luke's patience, but when he tries Luke's patience and Luke kind of erupts like that, it's like I'm curious, was Yoda's hesitance for real, or was it like a small like trying to teach Luke that first lesson? But obviously, that's my curiosity. Is Yoda being legitimately careful, or is he just trying to teach Luke some patience? Because we know now what Yoda's seen and Yoda's been through. He doesn't want to make another Anakin. And I think also that comes with the too old. How even Anakin was too old, because you really gotta, there's like raising a kid. You understand now that the Jedi, if you have children, you understand the whole idea of, you're raising them from birth, like the patience and the behaviors and everything. And it's important, especially when you're powerful and you're gifted with things like the Force. It all comes into play. So now even that has more meaning when you say too old to be getting the training. Like, I understand now. My gripe here, and I've never been a big prequel hater, but when you watch the good things about Empire, you start reflecting to the things that did wrong with the prequels. And there's a lot of things about the prequels. Forget Jar Jar. Forget even my least favorite part is when 3PO gets his head knocked out in Attack of the Clones. Forget all that. Okay? Because Dave Filoni has almost justified that and given us a reason, the purpose behind these is to set up the changing of the universe and what goes down. And you can make little inner stories to make anything cool. Here's the big problem. The big problem is the most important thing was Vader's fall to the dark side. And what I don't like about it is the way they make it so much more subtle and Luke, be careful. Don't give in to anger. Don't give in to fate. And even the things they said to Anakin, fear, this and that. And then Anakin becomes Darth Vader because he almost got basically tricked or punked. And that takes away the natural transition to the dark side. So that's really my biggest gripe with the prequels. Once again, my least favorite is 2 because it was a long road to nowhere. But really, when you see how careful and everything and how everything is broken down by Yoda with, Luke, don't get angry, don't get scared, be careful. Obi-Wan's like, oh, you're not ready. Luke, don't go too fast. Luke wants to go help his friends, which is part of Anakin's downfall. But it's just Vader's transition is just clunky and unnatural. It's almost situational. It should have been more subtly developed. It should have been something just, and Lucas had this idea, and I think when Lucas made the prequels, there's no going back, there's no changing them. I love them. They're great. I mean, they did their job, but it's missed opportunities. That's what it comes back to. I never look at something and say that sucked. I look at something and say, they missed an opportunity to do it better. Let's go to Lando, because we get on Cloud City and we're first introduced to Lando, which is significant because this is going to come up in the Solo movie. Obviously, Lando played by Billy D. Williams, and the role is going to be reprised by Donald Glover, which is interesting in itself. I think he could pull a Billy D. Williams, but I'm looking forward to seeing the character of Lando Calrissian and Han Solo even being reprised if it's done right. And I think from Woody Harrelson's telling us Ron Howard's got under control, the things we've seen, the Kessel Run and everything, I'm excited about it. Like I said, once again, I think that the teaser is going to give us the sell. I think we're going to know from the teaser. You really can't tell much from a teaser all the time, but it's really are you selling this as Han Solo? That's all you have to do in this 2-minute teaser you're going to do. And that's, that is a lot of that's up to the way they cut the trailer and stuff. Let's go to the 3PO. 3PO is great in Empire. Once again, going to my thing 3PO is a really cool character, and the way they handle him in the prequels, they made him a little bit of a goofy, almost a little too Jar Jar-ish. He's getting his head knocked off and doing these bumbling things, but 3PO is a cool cat in the original trilogy. Maybe a little goofier in Jedi, which eventually we'll do a revisit of that because of just the nature of that movie itself. 3PO is great in Empire. Everybody's pretty much at their best in Empire. We get to the point where it's Luke and Vader's lightsaber fight, and I always had it in my head the way I always feel about the lightsaber fights is, the prequels, when we first saw them, it was awesome. And then after you watch it over and over again, you're like, okay, this is a little over choreographed maybe. through granted, I love the part like when Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting and there's and then the old Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight in A New Hope is just really slow in comparison to that. But I always liked the lightsaber fight in Jedi. The final lightsaber fight where, he goes, perhaps your sister will. And Luke's like, never! Chasing backwards. And you got that awesome scene of, he's got Vader on the defensive and he's chasing Vader backwards. And it's, it's really cool, but I always thought it was cool because of the nature and the significance of the scene. But you go to the Empire duel between Vader and Luke, and it kind of starts the same as the Obi-Wan thing where it's like, shh, shh. Like, they're kind of waiting for each other's next moves, which I guess is a little samurai-ish, like Dave Filoni had referred to in the rematch between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul in the cartoon. By the way, check out Rebels if you haven't, because it's freaking awesome. That lightsaber fight, it starts a little slow, and all of a sudden, as the nature of the conversation, the aggression progresses, the lightsaber fight gets progressive. And Vader's his fighting is kind of consistent with the way he was fighting with in Rogue One, whereas he's aggressive and moving, he's got like deliberate moves and there's a little anger, like the one-handed slashes. If you watch it again, that lightsaber fight where he's, that climactic one with him in Cloud City with Luke, it's very consistent with Rogue One. And the lightsaber fights I enjoy are the ones that I really like. I like the new trilogy. The newest one, I love Rey. I think she's a fantastic character. Last Jedi, we have a review about that if you want to check it out. But, I like everything. But what I really like about the new prequels is I think the lightsabers fights are natural. They're not over choreographed, under choreographed, or they seem real. They seem like people just fighting for their lives. Of course, the end of the movie, the big climactic is the revelation that Vader is Luke's father, which goes back to what you know now about Anakin, and what you didn't know was join me, we could rule the galaxy as father and son. And the significance of that, knowing he had the same thing with Padme. Vader always wanted the Emperor out of the way, and Vader's probably had a hatred of the Emperor for a long time. And he's even when he first started, he wanted the Emperor out of the way. He's like, I don't need you, bro. I just need this dark side. I need my Empire